Welcome back, welcome back. In January, Iran will have been an Islamic republic for 30 years. Reza Pahlavi was only a teenager in 1979 when the Islamic Revolution ousted his late father, the Shah of Iran. I spoke to the Shah in 1980 in Panama in what was to be his last interview.
So you remain a king, you do not abdicate?
Not willingly. I might be replaced.
Does a king have to agree to being abdicating?
Yes, all that, yes. Unless he is decapitated.
Reza Pahlavi now lives in the United States, travels the world a lot, where he is a leading advocate of the principles of freedom and human rights in his homeland, and democracy too. He joins me now to talk about his hopes for Iran's future. Welcome, Reza. So good to see you again.
Indeed, David. It's wonderful to be with you again.
And tell me, it's, as we were just saying there, 30 years almost of an Islamic republic. Do you think this regime and constitution could last for another 30 years?
David, the overlaying principle is simply the fact that the theocracy of modern days that completely denies its citizenry the very basic fundamental rights that every human being ought to have could not possibly continue to survive for long. The only thing that delays its demise is, of course, the extreme repressive nature of it. But then again, we have seen the most brutal dictatorships fall at the end. My entire ambition here is to help our country, ride this storm and ultimately transition to a secular democratic government in the future parliamentary system, however, at the least cost possible, both humanly and financially, to the nation.
And in fact, how could that happen? You wouldn't want it to be by an invasion by a foreign country.
Certainly not. So, first of all, I would like to tell you that Iranians as a society are, in my view, the most natural ally of the free world. They've been kept hostage by a regime that has placed itself between them and the rest of the world. I think they have a clear vision today, particularly the new generation that has had time to reflect upon all the experiences of the past and look forward for an opportunity to regain that path of modernity and advancement. But they need support. They can organize, but they need support.
70%, because the birth rate's been so high, 70% are under 30, aren't they?
You're correct, exactly.
And do they have a different attitude to ayatollahs and mullahs? Are they like the young sometimes are, rebelling against that, rebelling against religion, or is their attitude different to the older people?
Look, one cannot say categorically that just because there's been an Islamic regime that has, in the name of Islam, done tremendous horrors, that has also hurt the faith itself. It is true, some people are turning away from it. But it would not be really true to say that the fact that they're against a theocracy means that they're against religion. I want to make this very clear. Some of us are more secular than others in terms of how important the aspect of religion is. But there's, I think, an overwhelming majority of Iranians who believe that the only way we could have a democratic system is an observance of clear separation of religion from government. We could have our faith if we choose to have. It is not inconsistent with being secular in terms of politics. That's the big lesson learned, because until our countrymen did not experiment directly religious governance, it's a little bit like Europe at the Inquisition period and what happened after. That kind of background where the subject of religion could have been a taboo subject to discuss. Today, it's a very open debate. You have the most interesting debate on secularism in theological schools in Qom today in Iran, as a result of all that.
That's fascinating. And who really runs the country now? I mean, does the President Ahmadinejad, does he wield real power, or is it still with the clerics, the mullahs, the ayatollahs? Is he the most powerful man in the country?
No, the most powerful man has been and will remain the supreme leader. That's ultimately the final decision maker and the person as an unelected official that has the final veto on anything that has been decided or legislated. I'm not suggesting that whoever represents the post of the president is totally powerless, but the ultimate overriding dominance in decision and direction remains still in the hand of the supreme leader, in this case Khamenei.
still in his hand. And how could he be overthrown peacefully?
Well, clearly, these kind of regimes will not voluntarily slip away. They have to be pressured into ultimate submission and ultimate collapse. I think it's the classic case of whether we could, by means of, shall we say, civil disobedience as a method. Gandhi did it in India, Mandela saw it in South Africa, many Latin American countries went through it, recently in Eastern Europe, Serbia with Milosevic, the Ukraine, and what have you. I don't think Iran is a breed apart when it comes to certain methods of civil disobedience that avoids violence, is not brutal, and doesn't require outside intervention. But I'll be the first one to tell you, in full honesty, having studied the case and history of so many civil disobedience movements, it will not be able to do it all by itself without some kind of international support, which is why I think there has to be some kind of a coordination between whatever the world is doing today in terms of its foreign policy, including the politics of sanctions, for instance, such as UN resolutions and what have you, and couple it with the empowerment of people within Iran as a pressure point that could tip the scale in favor of a peaceful movement of change rather than a violent confrontation.
Do you think, Reza, that in your lifetime you'll make it home again to Tehran?
You know, it's funny you ask me this, David, because in the 1980s, I was thinking to myself, I doubt if in my lifetime I will ever see the crumbling of the Berlin Wall. And yet it happened very fast.
Right.
So I've never lost hope of the fact, not just for me, mind you, there's so many millions of Iranians who are now, some of them forced to live in exile, like myself, who are dreaming to return to their home. That's where we belong. And that's the entire raison d'etre of my activities. I have a duty as an Iranian to my country. I don't care where I end up. I would love to be back home. That's where I belong. I like to wake up in the morning and see the Alborz mountain again. I'm tired of seeing the forests of Maryland, for God's sakes. I want to be back home. But most importantly for me is for my country to be free. It's for Iranians who deserve so much more than what they have right now in terms of their civilization, their culture, a nation that has proven itself so capable and has contributed so much to humanity. To be today isolated, brandished as a terrorist state, due to no fault of the people themselves, that is something that no Iranian who is responsible could ever accept or tolerate. We have to be able to succeed, and I have faith in my fellow compatriots. They've done it before, but they need moral support. The young people today did not think that there's hopelessness, so that they have to be forced into drug addiction and stick needles into themselves with heroin, or be forced to prostitution out of poverty. There is opportunities on the horizon, but we need as a nation to rise and do our part. I'm pretty confident that the world could not possibly turn their back on such an appeal, because it's a matter of conscience, it's a matter of moral responsibilities as well. And I hope that to see this more and more pervasive in the conduct and attitude of so many different free countries, nations and governments as they tackle the Iranian problem, to factor in the issue of the Iranian people and human rights and democracy, and not just focus on the nuclear issue, for instance, yes, or terrorism.
Do you think, I was going to ask you, do you think that Iran, the regime, has nuclear weapons, or is just on the way there?
This latest report that has come out recently about, I'm sure you saw it too, is reshaping the entire time frame that some of the pundits and experts were predicting in terms of when, in fact, Iran's nuclear capability might lie. It appears to me that based on this particular report, quite contrary to what the NIA report in the United States had predicted, we are much closer to that timeline, which can only make things more complicated diplomatically. And again, the prospect of confrontation may once again rise, which is something that concerns me, because at any cost I would like to see that scenario be avoided.
Reza, thank you very much. Well, now from